In the middle of a family banquet, my mother-in-law slapped me so hard my mouth bled, yet my husband just sat there eating. In silence, I sold our $1.1 million condo. 3 days later, she brought over 20 relatives to tour their new home, only to turn pale at the scene that awaited them. The clinking of glasses, the roaring laughter, and the overwhelming scent of heavy perfumes in the upscale restaurant made me nauseous. Today was the first birthday party for my sister-in-law Tara's son. It was a lavish banquet that my mother-in-law, Martha, had insisted on hosting at one of the city's most expensive steakhouses, just to show off to our relatives visiting from the Midwest. I sat there, completely isolated amidst the joyful faces of my husband's family, feeling like an unwanted outsider. This, despite the fact that I was the one who had secretly paid the massive deposit for the venue when Tara complained she was short on cash. My husband, Derek, was busy walking from table to table, toasting with everyone. His face was flushed with alcohol and the vain pride of being flattered by his extended family. As the party reached its peak, Martha stood up, clapping her hands to signal for silence. She cleared her throat, her eyes sweeping over the crowd before landing squarely on me. It was a calculating gaze that I had become all too familiar with over my 3 years of marriage. She announced loudly, "On this joyous occasion, I have an announcement to make. Next week, Tara and her family will be moving to the city, so my precious grandson can attend a top-tier private school. Derek and his wife will move out and rent an apartment, or stay at her parents' house for a year to give their luxury condo at Riverwalk Towers to Tara." The entire room erupted in applause, praising Martha's generosity, but my ears were ringing. That Riverwalk condo was the result of my blood, sweat, and tears. It was where I had poured every dime of my savings, plus 70% of the down payment funded by my parents selling their land back home. Derek had only contributed a tiny, symbolic fraction. But because I trusted him, because of the naive concept of what's mine is yours in marriage, I had put his name on the deed alongside mine. Now she wanted to snatch it away as casually as pulling a toy out of a bag. I took a deep breath, trying to suppress the fury boiling in my chest. My voice trembled, but it was clear. "Mom, I do not agree to this. That house was bought with my hard-earned money and my parents' life savings. I am not moving anywhere." Martha froze, the smile dying on her lips. She didn't expect the usually quiet, enduring daughter-in-law to defy her in front of the entire family. She glared at me, her voice a sharp hiss. "What did you just say? My son's house is my house, and I have the right to arrange it. Tara is his younger sister. You are her sister-in-law. How can you be so petty and calculating with your own family?" I looked straight into her eyes, recalling the horrific scene from last year when Tara came to stay for a month. My pristine living room was turned into a war zone. The imported leather sofa was destroyed by her kid with a ballpoint pen, and the walls were covered in muddy footprints. My response grew firmer. "Did you forget how Tara ruined my living room last year?" I said what I said. "The house is mine, and no one is moving in without my permission." Asterisk smack, smack, asterisk. 2 deafening slaps echoed through the room, cutting me off. My vision went dark. A piercing pain exploded on my left cheek, then immediately on my right. I stumbled, falling against the edge of the table. I tasted the metallic, copper tang of fresh blood oozing from the corner of my mouth. The restaurant fell dead silent. The soft background jazz suddenly felt pathetically absurd. Martha stood there, her hands still shaking from the sheer force of the blows, pointing her finger at my face and screaming, "You disrespectful brat! How dare you talk back to me? I'm teaching you a lesson so you know exactly who the boss of this family is." I didn't cry. It felt like my tears had flowed backward into my soul the moment she struck me. I raised my aching eyes, searching for Derek, the man I shared my life and bed with. I hoped he would rush over to catch me, or at least say a single word in my defense. But no. Derek sat at the opposite table, his chopsticks still in his hand, actively avoiding my gaze. He picked up a piece of steak, put it in his bowl, and casually called out in a cold, monotone voice, "You know how Mom's temper is. Why did you have to argue and ruin the mood for everyone? Apologize to Mom, sit down, and eat. Don't make a scene and let people laugh at us." Derek's words were like a razor-sharp blade, severing the very last thread of affection I had left for him. It wasn't the mother-in-law's slaps that hurt the most. It was the cruel apathy of this man. He was more afraid of losing face than he was of his wife being assaulted. He valued my sacrifices and my dignity less than a piece of steak on his plate. I looked at Derek, who just kept his head down and continued eating. But inside me, the image of the husband I once loved died completely. I wiped the blood from my lip, slowly stood up, and didn't say another word. In that deadly silence, I knew this marriage was truly over. I walked into the restroom and locked the door behind me. In the mirror, the woman staring back looked pathetic. One side of my face was swollen and bright red, bearing the clear imprint of 5 fingers. I turned on the faucet, splashing freezing cold water onto my face, trying to use the physical chill to numb the burning pain on my cheek and the raging hurricane in my heart. I didn't cry. Absolutely not a single tear fell. My self-pity had been incinerated, leaving only the cold ashes of a brutal awakening. For 3 years, I had lived like a ghost, swallowing every insult, working myself to the bone to build this family, only to be rewarded with 2 slaps in public and the betrayal of a heartless husband. I pulled out my phone. My hands were still shaking, but my mind was terrifyingly clear. I didn't call my mother to cry. I knew how it would break her heart to see her precious daughter trampled upon. Instead, I dialed Harrison, an old college friend who was now a top-tier real estate and asset dispute lawyer. As soon as he picked up, I spoke. My voice was hoarse but decisive. Harrison, execute Plan B. I want to sell the condo immediately. Within 3 days, there was a brief silence on the other end, then a short reply. Are you sure about this, Hannah? Once we trigger this, there is no turning back. I looked at my reflection, a bitter smile twisting my lips. I'm sure. I don't care if we sell it below market value, as long as it's an all-cash deal and done quickly. I hung up. My mind drifted back to a fateful afternoon 6 months ago. Derek had been throwing a tantrum, demanding we take out a bank loan to buy a luxury SUV to show off to his clients. But I knew the truth. He needed the money to secretly fund Tara's cryptocurrency gambling addiction. I didn't expose him. Instead, I quietly beat him at his own game. That day, I prepared a thick stack of paperwork for him to sign for the supposed loan. Taking advantage of Derek's laziness when reading documents and his arrogant assumption that I would handle everything, I slipped a very important piece of paper into the middle of the stack, a highly specific power of attorney, POA. That document granted me absolute authority to buy, sell, transfer, or gift any jointly owned real estate for a period of 5 years without his physical presence or secondary consent. Derek signed it with a flourish, even rushing me so he could go out drinking. He had his signature notarized at the office, laughing happily about his impending new car, completely unaware that he had just handed me the power of life and death over our $1.1 million home. I fixed my clothes, applied a thick layer of foundation to conceal the bruising, and stepped out of the restroom. I returned to the banquet. The atmosphere was as loud and festive as if the assault had never happened. Martha was happily soaking up the praises of her relatives, basking in the filial piety of her son and the newly enforced obedience of her daughter-in-law. Derek let out a sigh of relief when he saw me return. His eyes gleamed with satisfaction, thinking I had submitted to my beating. I walked over to the table and said softly to him, I have a headache. I'm going to head home early to rest. You stay here and entertain Mom and the guests. Derek nodded hastily, not bothering to ask how much my head hurt. He just called out after me, Yeah, go home. And don't throw another fit. Mom is in a good mood. I bowed my head to the guests, turned, and walked away. Behind me was the triumphant laughter of my in-laws. They were raising their glasses, toasting to Tara's bright future in the luxury condo they thought was theirs. They had no idea this would be the last time they ever laughed so freely. I walked out of the restaurant. The night wind whipped against my face, freezing cold, but my heart felt incredibly light. A ruthless but fair plan had been set into motion. When I arrived at the Riverwalk Towers, our luxury condo was still brightly lit. The high-end, cozy furnishings that I had poured my soul into selecting now looked entirely alien. I walked straight into the master bedroom and opened the safe. The power of attorney lay quietly at the bottom, right next to the property deed and the gold jewelry my mother had given me on my wedding day. I held the thin piece of paper. It weighed 1,000 pounds. It wasn't just a document to sell a house. It was the document that would sever this rotting marriage forever. I wasn't going to sleep tonight. I had to prepare for an exodus, a departure that would leave an absolute void for those greedy parasites. The apartment felt chilling. It wasn't the AC. It was the coldness of human betrayal. I walked over to Derek's closet, pushed aside his designer dress shirts, and revealed the small digital safe hidden in the back. I punched in the code. The safe beeped open. I pulled out the waterproof folder. I took out the deed, my bridal jewelry, and most importantly, that notarized power of attorney. I took photos of every page and sent them via encrypted message to Harrison. Just 5 minutes later, my phone buzzed. Harrison was calling. His voice sounded sharp and professional in the dead of night. "I've contacted an investment group. They specialize in distressed properties and have liquid cash ready to go. But they bargain hard. The market value is $1, $1 million. But they're only offering $900,000 for a 4-8-hour close. Are you willing to take the loss? Asterisk 900,000. Asterisk, the number made me pause. Losing $200,000 was no small matter. It was the sweat and blood of my family. But I looked at the swollen, throbbing bruise on my face reflected in the window pane. The physical pain reminded me that my freedom and dignity were worth 1,000 times more than money right now. I gripped the phone tightly, my voice resolute but laced with bitterness. "Sell it. I accept the price. My only condition is that the funds must be wired to my account within 48 hours, and they handle the title transfer immediately." Harrison sighed on the other end. He probably felt sorry for my financial loss, but he replied simply, "Understood. They will be there at 8 a.m. tomorrow to view the property. Be ready." I hung up, sitting on the cold hardwood floor, leaning against the bed frame. I looked around the room one last time. I once thought I would spend my life here. Now, it was just merchandise to be liquidated so I could escape this marital hell. Around 1 a.m., the rattling of the front door lock signaled Derek's return. He stumbled in, reeking of alcohol and a strange, cheap women's perfume. Seeing me still sitting in the dim yellow light of the living room, he frowned, his slurred voice dripping with arrogance. "Why aren't you asleep? What are you doing sitting there? Trying to play ghost?" He threw his suit jacket onto the sofa and stumbled into the kitchen to pour a glass of water, completely ignoring my swollen eyes and the bruised cheek. I sat as still as a statue, looking at the man I had loved with all my heart, who had now revealed himself as a heartless monster. Derek finished his water and turned to me, his tone still carrying the condescension of a superior. "Mom already said it. This weekend, the whole extended family is coming to tour the new house. You better pack your personal crap and move it to the study. Or send it back to your parents' place. Don't leave your clutter around taking up space. Tara likes a spacious layout." He spoke about kicking his wife out of her own home as casually as asking me to take out the trash. I looked at Derek, a hollow, chilling smile creeping onto my lips. I replied, my voice as light as the breeze. "Sure. Don't worry. I will clean everything out. I won't leave a single thing behind to offend anyone's eyes." Hearing this, Derek looked incredibly satisfied. He genuinely believed that his mother's slaps had taught me submission. He had no idea that clean everything out carried a far more devastating meaning in my mind. He stumbled into the master bedroom, leaving me alone in the vast living room, silently counting down the hours until the bomb of truth exploded. The next morning, I called in sick to work. It was the perfect excuse to hide the bruises on my face and execute my plan. At exactly 8 a.m., the doorbell rang. Standing there were a middle-aged couple, dressed simply but exuding the sharp aura of seasoned investors. Harrison was with them. They were the cash buyers, people ready to drop duffel bags of cash to buy other people's problems at a discount. I invited them in, trying to stay as calm as possible despite my racing heart. The woman scanned the apartment, her sharp eyes evaluating every detail, from the hardwood floors to the custom crown molding and the balcony view. She nodded in approval. I had meticulously designed this place, and the location was prime. When her eyes landed on my face, where the bruise was still visible despite heavy concealer, she frowned slightly. Her voice carried a mix of curiosity and scrutiny. "This is a beautiful home. Why are you selling it so frantically? And what happened to your face? It looks like you were hit." I flinched slightly but quickly regained my composure, forcing a stiff smile. "Oh, I was in a minor scooter accident. As for the house, to be honest, my family is facing a massive financial emergency. We need liquid cash immediately to save a business, which is why I'm willing to let it go for this price." I purposely averted my eyes, feigning desperation and vulnerability. This made them believe I was backed into a corner, confirming that this deal was a fat, juicy piece of meat they couldn't pass up. The husband nudged his wife, signaling her not to pry into my personal life. After a quick negotiation, they agreed to lock in at $900,000. While it was below market value, they committed to wiring the full amount within 24 hours. Harrison pulled out the pre-drafted purchase agreement. Every clause was clearly stated to protect my rights and ensure the legality of the power of attorney. I picked up the pen. My hand shook slightly as the ink hit the paper. This signature wasn't just selling an asset. It was putting an end to the 3 years of youth I had wasted on my in-laws. When I handed over the POA bearing Derek's signature and notary seal, the buyer scrutinized it. He asked one last time to be certain, "Is your husband fully aware and agreeable to this sale? I don't want any messy legal disputes down the line." I looked him dead in the eye, my gaze unwavering. "You have my word. The legal documents are ironclad and fully notarized. My husband granted me absolute authority to make this decision. He is away on a business trip and cannot be here." Harrison nodded, confirming it in his capacity as a lawyer, which put the buyers entirely at ease. They immediately wired a $200,000 earnest money deposit into my account right at the dining table. My phone chimed with the bank notification. It was a dry, electronic sound, yet it brought an incredible sense of liberation. I looked at the numbers on the screen. It was done. Legally, this house no longer belonged to us. We were just waiting for the title company to finalize the transfer tomorrow. I saw them out, watching their backs disappear into the elevator, before turning back to the empty condo. For lunch, I ate a quick cup of instant ramen alone. The house looked the same, but its soul was gone. I remembered the early days when Derek and I first moved in. We went shopping for every bowl, every pair of chopsticks. We painted the bedroom wall the shade of blue I loved. Those memories now felt like shards of glass slicing into my heart. I asked myself, if my mother-in-law hadn't slapped me yesterday, if Derek had stood up to protect me, would I have been pushed to this extreme? Probably not. But life doesn't deal in ifs, only in cause and effect. And the bitter fruit they were about to eat was planted by his cowardice and his mother's cruelty. That afternoon, I started packing the small things. I only took what truly belonged to me: my favorite books, the clothes I bought with my own salary, and my family photo albums. Everything related to Derek and his family, I left exactly where it was. The following morning, I called out of work again. Derek went to work as usual. He lightly whistled while tying his tie, looking thrilled, thinking his wife had submitted, and his precious sister was about to move to the city to upgrade her life. Watching his back disappear behind the door, I smiled a bitter smile. As soon as his car left the driveway, I called the professional moving company I had booked in advance. Everything needed to be fast and precise, like surgically removing a tumor. The movers looked at me with confusion when I pointed out the very specific, limited items to take. "Are you sure you only want to move these, ma'am? What about that expensive solid wood dining set?" I shook my head, my voice calm. "Leave it all. I am only taking what is mine." I supervised them as they packed my clothes, books, and the vanity set I had bought with my own year-end bonus. But most importantly, I personally packed my home office space. I opened Derek's desk drawer. Digging deep underneath old files, I pulled out a tiny, black USB flash drive. This USB was something Derek thought he had hidden perfectly. It contained dark secrets he never wanted anyone to see. Explicit texts with his ex-girlfriend, shady wire transfers to unknown accounts, and evidence of him embezzling project funds from his company to create a slush fund. I had accidentally found it 3 months ago while cleaning. At the time, I chose to stay silent, lying to myself that everyone makes mistakes. But now, it would be the sharpest sword I'd use to defend myself if necessary. I gripped the USB tightly, the cold metal pressing into my skin as cold as the heart of the husband I had trusted. When the moving truck rolled away, the apartment felt bizarrely empty. The large furniture was still there, the sofa, the TV, the fridge, the bed, but the space had lost the warmth of a woman's touch. It was like a soulless corpse, a glamorous shell that was hollow inside. I stood in the middle of the living room and opened my banking app. The remaining $700,000 from the sale had safely landed in my account. Combined with my personal savings, I had enough capital to start my life over. I executed one final transaction before leaving. I wired exactly $40,000 into Derek's checking account. This was the exact principal amount he had contributed toward the furniture and a tiny fraction of the initial down payment. I didn't want to take a single cent that belonged to him. I didn't want him having any excuse to claim I was a greedy thief. In the memo line, I typed slowly and deliberately. Asterisk final settlement of shared assets. What's mine is mine. What's yours is yours. We are done. Asterisk, I hit send. Seeing the transaction. Successful notification. I exhaled deeply. $40,000 in exchange for my freedom, my dignity, and my self-respect. To me, it was a cheap price to pay. I looked at the apartment one last time, the place that once held so much laughter and silent tears. I felt no regret for these lifeless walls. I only mourned the years of my youth wasted on the wrong person. I locked the door, dropped the keys in the mailbox, as agreed with the buyer, turned, and walked away. I never looked back once. I took an Uber to a small, furnished studio apartment I had quickly rented in another district. The room was tiny, barely the size of my old living room, but it was clean, and most importantly, it was entirely mine. Sitting on the narrow twin bed, I opened my laptop and began drafting the unilateral divorce petition. Every word that appeared on the bright screen felt like a nail being hammered into the coffin of this marriage. I knew a massive storm was waiting, but I was no longer afraid. That evening, I returned to the old condo not to stay, but to finish acting out the final scene of the play. I had told the buyers I needed one last day to deep clean the place before handing it over, and they had happily agreed. Derek came home at 7 p.m. He seemed in high spirits. He looked around the house, noticed it felt much more spacious because I had cleared out all my personal clutter, and nodded in approval. See? You cleaned it up, and the place looks so much classier. Mom is going to be so happy when she sees this. If you just act like a good, obedient wife like this, wouldn't our family be peaceful? I was busy in the kitchen. Hearing those words made my stomach churn. He praised the emptiness of the house, completely oblivious to the fact that his wife's presence had been erased from it. He didn't notice that our framed wedding photos were missing from the shelves, or that the vases I usually kept filled with fresh flowers were gone. To him, this house was just a trophy to show off, and I was just an unpaid maid whose job was to keep it shiny. I turned around and placed the takeout dinner I had bought onto plates, giving a faint, empty smile. Yes, I want Mom to be happy too. Come eat before it gets cold. Derek sat down, happily chewing on a piece of sweet and sour rib. He talked endlessly about his weekend plans. I booked a 3-0 passenger shuttle. It's going to pick everyone up from Indiana early in the morning. By noon, they'll arrive at the banquet hall downstairs, and then I'll bring them up for the grand tour. Make sure you prepare nice gift bags for all the aunts and uncles. Mom said everyone is coming this time, even the family patriarch. We have to make ourselves look good. I sat across from him, barely picking at my food, listening to him paint a picture of a glorious future on a foundation that had already collapsed. I replied, my voice laced with a thick irony that completely flew over his head. Don't worry. I've prepared a very special gift. I guarantee everyone will have a memory they will never forget. Derek laughed smugly, thinking I had finally seen the light. That's my wife. I knew you'd understand. Don't hold a grudge about that slap the other day. Mom is getting old. She just loses her temper sometimes. After dinner, Derek sat watching TV, his feet propped up on the coffee table, reveling in his perceived dominance over the household. I finished washing the dishes, walked into the living room, and said, "I'm exhausted. I'm going to sleep in the guest room tonight so I can wake up early and prep. Have a good night." "Yeah, whatever," Derek mumbled, his eyes glued to the screen. "Go sleep. Just remember to be up early tomorrow." He didn't even question why I was sleeping in a different room. He probably didn't care where I slept, as long as I didn't bother his evening relaxation. I walked into the small guest room and closed the door. The room was stripped bare, leaving only an old mattress. I lay down, staring at the stark white ceiling. This was my last night in this house, and legally my last night as Derek's wife in practice. Tomorrow, when the sun rose, this theater of fake happiness would drop its curtains. I imagined the scene tomorrow when those people arrived and faced the brutal truth. A sliver of guilt tried to creep in, but it was instantly snuffed out by the memory of my mother-in-law's slap and Derek's cruel apathy. They sowed the wind, they would reap the whirlwind. I slept fitfully that night. Derek's loud snoring echoed from the master bedroom, sounding incredibly grating. He was sleeping soundly, dreaming of vain glory, completely oblivious that his world was about to collapse beneath his feet. On the dawn of the third day, I woke up before the sun fully broke over the horizon. Beside me, Derek was still dead to the world. The steady snoring coming from his carefree chest made me feel a mix of amusement and bitter irony. He slept peacefully inside his bubble of fake happiness, unaware that a massive hurricane was waiting to swallow his family's arrogance whole. I quietly got out of bed. I didn't have any bulky luggage to carry, as I had moved all my important belongings the day prior. I only carried my small purse containing my phone, wallet, and the house keys, the keys I was about to hand over to their new owner. I stood silently at the entrance of the living room, taking one final, sweeping look at the apartment. The space was dead quiet, cleaned to a chilling perfection. Just as I had promised Derek, asterisk cleaned out completely. Asterisk. I placed my set of keys on the kitchen island, right next to a sticky note with a brief message. Asterisk, I went to work early. Make sure you host everyone well today. Asterisk. A final lie, a cruel mercy before the naked truth was exposed. I pulled the front door shut. The dry Times click, Times, sounded like a gavel striking my heart, officially terminating my 3 years as a humiliated wife and daughter-in-law. At 8 a.m., I was at the title company's office, finalizing the handover of the keys and receiving the final clearance paperwork from the buyers. Everything was fast, clean, and without any lingering attachments. By 10 a.m., I was sitting in my new rental studio. I held a steaming cup of coffee, but my heart was ice cold. I opened my phone and accessed the security camera app for the old condo, which I had intentionally not yet deactivated. The screen lit up, live streaming the events unfolding at the place that, just hours ago, was my home. On the screen, a white charter bus pulled up in front of the luxurious Riverwalk Towers lobby. The doors opened, and Martha stepped out first. Her face was radiant, her chin tilted up in pure arrogance. Following her was a massive, chaotic crowd of people, carrying all sorts of luggage and country gifts. Someone was holding a crate of live, squawking chickens. Another carried a heavy sack of rice. Someone else struggled with a styrofoam cooler leaking God knows what. 20 loud, boisterous people brought the chaotic energy of a rural flea market straight into the polished, marble-floored lobby, causing the concierge and security guards to frown in deep annoyance. I saw Derek run out to greet his mother. He laughed heartily, shaking hands with every aunt and uncle. He proudly pointed up at the towering skyscraper, bragging about his immense success. Martha patted her son's shoulder, speaking so loudly that the audio picked up her booming voice perfectly. "See, everyone, look how successful my son is. High-rise luxury condo. And his wife? Oh, she's so obedient. Does whatever I say. I told her to clear out so you all could visit, and she did it immediately." The relatives nodded in awe, looking at Martha and Derek like they were royalty. They had no idea this was just a play nearing its final act. I watched them pile into the elevators like a herd of cattle. The smile on Martha's face grew wider by the second. She was already imagining stepping into the cool, air-conditioned, luxury condo. She was imagining ordering me around to serve drinks to the whole family. She was drunk on the power trip of being the ultimate, commanding mother-in-law. I took a sip of my bitter coffee, never taking my eyes off the screen, silently counting down. The crowd of 20 poured out of the elevator. Their booming laughter shook the quiet, upscale hallway. Several neighbors cracked their doors open to peer out, their eyes full of irritation at the uncultured noise. But Martha didn't care. She walked at the front, head held high like a victorious general returning to her manor, pointing at the thick, solid wood door of Unit 1505. "Here it is, my son's house. Make yourselves at home, everyone. Let me open the door so you can see the $1 million interior." Derek stood beside his mother, beaming with pride, urging her to punch in the code. Martha proudly raised her calloused index finger to the electronic keypad, pressing the familiar sequence her own birth date, which Derek had programmed to suck up to her. Asterisk beep, 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 ERRR. Asterisk the error chime sounded dryly, the keypad flashing an angry red. Martha frowned, muttering, "That's weird. Why isn't it working? Maybe my hands are sweaty." She wiped her fingers on her shirt and pressed the numbers again. Harder, more decisively. Asterisk ERRR. Asterisk. The same cold error tone rejected her access. The relatives started whispering. Someone asked, "Did they change the passcode, Martha? Tell your daughter-in-law to come open the door." Embarrassed, Martha turned and snapped at Derek. "Derek, call your wife and tell her to open this door right now. Did she dare change the code without telling me? Does that disrespectful brat expect the whole family to stand out here?" Derek looked flustered. He pulled out his phone and called my number. But of course, he was met with the automated, "The subscriber you have dialed is currently unavailable." Losing her patience, Martha began pounding violently on the heavy door. "Hannah, open up. Open this door for me right now. What the hell are you hiding in there for?" The heavy thudding echoed down the entire hallway. Finally, the door swung open, but the person standing there wasn't me, cowering in fear as Martha expected. Standing in the doorway was an unfamiliar, middle-aged man wearing casual home clothes, his face dark with fury. Flanking him were 2 building security guards holding batons. Martha froze, her eyes bugging out, her jaw dropping. Who are you? Why are you in my son's house? Where is my daughter-in-law?" The new homeowner looked at the messy crowd in front of him with utter disgust. He shouted, "You crazy old bat, who the hell are you asking? I am the owner of this condo. Who the hell are you people to come banging on my door and causing a riot this early in the morning?" It was like a bucket of ice water to Martha's face, but her aggressive nature flared up. She lunged forward. "You're lying. This is my son Derek's house. I came to visit his house. Are you robbers? Did you break into my son's house?" "Guards, arrest him!" the new owner sneered. He reached inside and pulled out a thick manila folder, shoving it right in Martha's face. His voice was like striking steel, articulating every single word. "Open your eyes and read it. Notarized purchase agreement. The deed was transferred into my name yesterday morning. I bought this house outright, paid in full. Now get the hell away from my property before I call the cops and have you all arrested for trespassing and disturbing the peace." The entire crowd of relatives gasped in shock. Chaotic murmurs erupted like a disturbed beehive. Martha stood paralyzed, rooted to the spot. Her face shifted from red to a sickly pale and then entirely white, drained of all blood. She turned to Derek, stammering incoherently. What is he saying?" "Sold. At the house. Why didn't I know?" Through the camera, I saw the absolute collapse in her eyes, the illusion of power, the delusion of a $1 million condo to show off to the world. All of it was smashed into a million pieces right in front of an audience. Derek stood frozen, his face as blank as a zombie's. The yelling of the new owner, the buzzing whispers of the relatives, the hysterical screaming of his mother, it all blended into a chaotic, ringing noise in his head. Derek lunged forward and snatched the paperwork from the stranger's hand. His eyes darted frantically across the black and white print. Asterisk purchase agreement. Seller, Hannah Sterling, acting as authorized representative for spouse. Buyer, Robert Vance. Asterisk. My signature was right there in plain sight, but what made Derek freeze entirely was the line beneath it. Asterisk pursuant to power of attorney document no. Asterisk memories flooded back like a slow-motion film. The image from a random afternoon 6 months ago. He was drunk on the dream of buying a luxury SUV to flex on his friends. I had handed him a thick stack of papers, telling him to sign quickly so we could get the bank loan notarized. He had scribbled his signature with a flourish, laughing happily, without reading a single word. It turned out that he had personally signed his own death warrant over his assets. He had personally handed the executioner's blade to me. That forgotten piece of paper had now become the Grim Reaper's scythe, cutting off every escape route for him and his family. Oh my God! The house is gone. It's really gone, everyone. Martha shrieked after snapping out of her shock. She collapsed onto the hallway floor, slapping her thighs and wailing pitifully. But then, a look of pure, savage fury flashed in her eyes as she turned to her precious son. She scrambled up and lunged at Derek like a wounded beast. You absolute idiot. What did you do to let that bitch sell the house? Are you brain-dead, son? Asterisk smack. Asterisk A. Devastating slap landed squarely on Derek's face, hitting him just as hard as the 2 slaps she had given me in the restaurant days ago. Derek stumbled, clutching his cheek, which now bore the bright red imprint of 5 fingers. He looked at his mother in bewilderment. The mother he always worshipped, always obeyed blindly. The mother whose displeasure he feared more than losing his own wife. Now, she was pouring all her violent wrath onto his head. And she didn't stop. She grabbed him by the collar, shaking him and screaming. Get my house back! You go get my house back right now. I don't care how you lost it, you get it back. Tara is moving here. Where the hell is your sister supposed to live now? The relatives standing around them either shook their heads in pity or covered their mouths to hide their smirks. They came here for a lavish housewarming party to witness extreme wealth. Who knew they'd get front-row seats to a free tragicomedy? The reputation Martha had spent so much effort building, Derek's vain pride, all of it shattered under that slap. The new homeowner stood leaning against the doorframe, crossing his arms and smirking in disgust. Are you done with your family drama yet? If you're done, get out of my sight. Don't make me call security to drag you out one by one. Derek let his arms drop to his sides. The physical pain was nothing compared to the humiliation gnawing at his soul. He looked at his mother screaming like a maniac, looked at the judging, mocking eyes of everyone around him, and suddenly realized he had lost everything. He lost his house, he lost his wife, and he lost his fake, inflated prestige in front of his entire extended family. He pulled out his phone, his hands shaking as he dialed my number again, desperately hoping to salvage some sort of explanation. But the only response was the hopeless, endless, automated tone of a blocked number. I sat in front of my phone screen, witnessing the entire spectacle, and felt absolutely no pity. That slap Martha gave Derek was simply the price he had to pay for his cowardice and enablement. The chaos in the Riverwalk Towers hallway didn't last more than 15 minutes before authorities intervened. 2 Chicago police officers, accompanied by 3 building security guards, arrived on the floor, demanding the crowd disperse. Seeing the police, Martha acted like a drowning woman, grabbing a lifeline. She threw herself into a more professional tantrum, crying and pointing at the new homeowner. Officer, help us! Robbers! They stole my son's house. Arrest him! Arrest these scammers for me. The senior police officer stepped forward sternly, demanding order. He asked the new homeowner for proof of ownership. The man calmly produced the entire legal file, the purchase agreement, the power of attorney, and the county tax receipts. Everything was legal, clear, and bulletproof. The officer turned to Martha and Derek, his voice hard. The paperwork for this property is completely legal, and the title has been transferred. You people are causing a public disturbance and trespassing. I am ordering you to disperse immediately. If you don't, we will be forced to arrest you. Hearing this, Martha jumped up. She didn't believe in laws or paperwork. She only believed in her own twisted logic. They're fake documents. They have to be fake. My daughter-in-law is a scammer. She stole the deed and sold it. You have to arrest her and bring her here to face me. Call Hannah here right now. Trembling, Derek handed his phone to the officer, claiming he had absolutely no knowledge of his wife selling the house. The officer took the phone and requested Derek call me to verify. This time, I answered. My voice echoed through the phone's speaker, so calm and icy it made Derek shudder. "Hello, I'm listening," the officer asked. "Are you Hannah Sterling? Someone is accusing you of fraudulently selling a property. How do you explain this?" I replied, enunciating every word clearly. "Officer, I sold that house based on a fully legal power of attorney that my husband signed and had notarized at the county clerk's office. The proceeds of the sale were split. I transferred his original principal investment back to his bank account, and I have the full wire transfer receipts to prove it. This was a civil transaction, fully consensual. There is no fraud whatsoever. My in-laws bringing a mob to cause a riot at that property is a violation of the law. I request that you handle them accordingly." Right after I spoke, I messaged the officer a picture of the notarized POA, the $40,000 wire transfer receipt, and the text messages where Derek rushed me to sign the loan documents, which was when he actually signed the POA. The officer reviewed the files and nodded. "Miss Sterling has provided sufficient evidence. This is a civil dispute. If you disagree with it, you can take her to civil court. But right now, everyone needs to clear the premises." Hearing that, Martha was completely dumbfounded. She didn't understand legal terminology. All she understood was that even the police weren't taking her side. She was about to throw another screaming fit when the building's security guards forcibly escorted her toward the elevators. The scene of 20 relatives carrying live chickens and sacks of rice, trudging dejectedly into the elevators under the strict escort of security guards, was incredibly pathetic. The squawking of the chickens blended with the heavy sighs of the aunts and uncles. My new rental studio was tucked away in a quiet alley. It was so silent I could hear the ticking of the wall clock. Outside the window, the dim yellow light from the street lamp cast shadows of the window bars onto the cold tile floor. I sat with my knees pulled to my chest on the small twin bed. The phone in front of me was lighting up continuously. Dozens of missed calls, a barrage of text messages flooding in like a broken dam. The caller ID flashed. Asterisk husband. Asterisk. A title that now only brought a bitter, mocking irony. I let it ring. The violent vibrating against the cheap wooden desk sounded like the death throes of a marriage that had rotted from the inside out a long time ago. At the 50th call, I decided to pick up, not because I still cared, and not because I wanted an explanation. I just wanted to personally put the final nail in this loud, obnoxious coffin. On the other end, Derek's screams were ear-piercing, his voice cracking with rage and panic. "Where the hell are you? Get your ass back here right now. You lied to me. You tricked my whole family, sold the house, and now you're hiding like a rat? My whole family is standing on the street right now. Do you have any humanity left?" Hearing those words, strangely, my heart didn't feel a single pang of pain anymore. It felt like walking through a massive hurricane. Standing in the eye of the storm is terrifying, but when the storm passes, looking back at the wreckage, you only feel a calm emptiness. I waited for him to unload all his toxic venom before slowly speaking. My voice was light, but as cold as glacial ice. "Where is Times Your Times house, or whether you're standing on the street? What does that have to do with me anymore? Didn't your mother say I was just a stranger? Just a freeloader living off your charity?" Derek froze for a beat. My absolute calmness seemed to terrify him more than if I had screamed back. He lowered his voice, shifting to a pleading tone mixed with blame. "What are you talking about? We've been married, sharing a bed for years. How could you be so cruel and calculating with me and Mom? Come back and we can talk. Mom is really, really angry." I burst out laughing. A dry, hollow laugh echoed in the empty room. Even now, he was using his mother's anger to threaten me. He still thought I was the naive, obedient Hannah who just nodded and said, "Yes, ma'am." I asked him, every word cutting like a knife. "Derek, When your mother slapped me so hard I bled from my mouth in the middle of that restaurant. What were you doing? You sat there, eating steak, and told me to apologize to her. Did you ask me if it hurt? Did you think about our marriage then? The other end of the line went dead silent. Only the sound of his heavy, ragged breathing could be heard. His silence was the most brutal answer. He couldn't answer. Or perhaps, deep down, he never considered my pain to be something worth caring about. I continued, my voice unwavering. I've signed the divorce papers and FedExed them to your office. The shared assets have been split fairly. The $40,000 I sent you is your payment for playing the role of a husband for the past 3 years. From now on, we walk separate paths. Don't ever look for me again. I hung up, my finger gliding lightly across the screen, selecting Time's block caller asterisk. The moment the title husband vanished into the blocked list, I felt like a 1,000-pound boulder had been lifted off my chest. The next morning, I arrived at work with dark circles under my eyes, heavily concealed by large sunglasses. As soon as I walked into the corporate lobby, I felt bizarre stares from my colleagues. They gathered in small groups, whispering to each other. But when they saw me approach, they scattered, leaving behind malicious, probing glares. I sat at my desk, opened my computer, and immediately understood why. On social media, in local community, Facebook groups, and even on trashy gossip blogs, my photo was plastered everywhere, with giant red circles and sensational headlines. Asterisk scammer daughter-in-law steals assets. Asterisk heartless wife sells in-law's house and runs off with lover. Asterisk Martha and Tara hadn't taken this lying down. With the advice of someone, they had hired a team of professional internet trolls and self-proclaimed drama streamers to attack me. And they didn't just stop at cyberbullying. They went all the way to my parents' house in rural Indiana. My mother called me, her voice shaking with terror. Hannah, what's happening? There's a mob of strange people outside the gate. They're holding up their phones, recording, screaming your name, calling you a scammer. Your dad went out to talk to them, and they shoved him. The neighbors are crowding the street. I gripped my phone, my nails digging so hard into my palm that it bled. I could endure personal humiliation, but daring to touch my frail, elderly parents was unforgivable. Martha, that backwoods woman. It turns out when pushed into a corner, she could resort to such venomous, mafia-style tactics. They were attacking my filial piety, attacking my family's honor, hoping I would panic and crawl back on my knees begging for mercy, or at least cough up the money to shut them up. I opened one of the live streams. In the video, Martha was sitting flat on the dirt road in front of my parents' gate. Her hair was intentionally messed up. She was fake crying and howling. I raised a snake in my house. My daughter-in-law sold my son's house. She stole $1 million and ran away. Oh my God, I'm an old woman and now I have to live on the streets. Next to her, Tara held a microphone, hyping her up. Share this stream, everyone. Let's expose the true face of this uneducated bitch. She's a cheater. She took my brother's money to feed her sugar baby. The comments section was flying by, filled with vicious, toxic curses from strangers who didn't know the first thing about the situation. Asterisk, she looks evil. Asterisk, lock that bitch up. Asterisk, poor old woman. Asterisk, the keyboard warriors, acting as self-righteous judges, were throwing digital stones at a woman they had never met. I stared at those words, feeling like thousands of needles were piercing my skin. The cruelty of ignorance, the malice of the mob. It was far more terrifying than my mother-in-law's slap. I asked my boss for the afternoon off, citing a family emergency. I couldn't sit still and let them trample my parents' dignity. I called my parents, calming them down, telling them to lock the doors, absolutely not go outside, and not to engage with the mob. My father, a man who had been gentle his entire life, just said one thing that made me burst into tears. I believe in you, sweetie. Whatever you did, I trust you. Stay calm and handle it. Don't worry about us. That unwavering trust was the only anchor keeping me from collapsing in this storm. I wiped my tears, my eyes turning icy cold. They wanted to play a media game. I would show them the raw power of the truth. Asterisk, The tree wants peace, but the wind won't stop. Asterisk. Fine. I will break the wind. I arranged to meet Harrison at a discreet coffee shop. Harrison looked at me, shaking his head in exhaustion, but with eyes full of determination. You were too nice. That's why they walked all over you. Now is not the time to be quiet. It's time to drop the evidence. I've already had a legal notary document all their defamatory posts and live streams. Now it's your turn to counterattack. I nodded, opened my laptop, and began drafting an article I had been brewing in my head all night. The title was short but carried immense weight. Asterisk, asterisk, the truth about the mother-in-law of the year and the $1.1 million slaps. Asterisk, asterisk, I didn't use aggressive or vulgar language. I simply told my story slowly and clearly, as if narrating someone else's life. I wrote about the 3 years of being a daughter-in-law, the tear-soaked dinners, the silent financial contributions that were never acknowledged. And then, I dropped the heavy artillery I had been quietly stockpiling. First was the security camera footage from the steakhouse on the day of the baby's birthday. Crystal clear video and audio capturing the exact moment Martha stood up and slapped me twice, so hard I fell into the table. More importantly, the lens perfectly captured Derek casually sitting there, picking up food, coldly telling me to apologize to her. The second video showed the devastating aftermath of my living room last year. Tara's son taking a Sharpie to my genuine leather sofa, while Tara lay on the table with her feet up, laughing hysterically. Next was a series of screenshots of bank statements from the last 3 years. Every paycheck of mine going into the joint account. Every payment for the mortgage, electricity, water, HOA fees, groceries, all of it came from my account. Conversely, Derek's account only showed personal expenses and sneaky wire transfers to Tara with memos like, asterisk, for your vacation, asterisk, asterisk, for your new bag, asterisk. The black and white contrast was so glaringly obvious that no one could argue who was actually funding that family. I hit publish. The post went live on major Reddit forums, Facebook community groups, and legal advice boards where my story had been distorted for the past few days. Within an hour, the post went incredibly viral. The very people who had been cursing me that morning were now doing a hard U-turn, tagging each other to look at the evidence. The outrage of the internet flipped like a tidal wave. They began counterattacking Tara's social media pages and the streaming channels that had smeared me. Asterisk. Oh my God, looking at that slap breaks my heart, and that garbage husband just kept eating. Asterisk, asterisk. Turns out the old hag is a freeloading parasite, acting like she owns the world. Asterisk, asterisk. The wife is too smart and too patient. If it were me, I would have killed him. Asterisk. Comments defending and sympathizing with me flooded in. I sat reading them, not feeling vindicated or overjoyed, just profoundly sad. Sad that family matters had to be exposed for the world to see. Sad that I had to resort to this to protect my dignity. But I knew this was the only bitter medicine that could cure my in-laws' delusions and greed. My phone buzzed incessantly. This time, it was apology texts from coworkers and encouraging messages from old friends. The heat of the scandal even caught the attention of a local daytime talk show specializing in modern family and legal conflicts. They contacted me, inviting me to a live panel discussion on the topic of generational conflict and modern marital assets. Surprisingly, Martha and Derek also agreed to participate. Perhaps they still believed that with Martha's ability to cry and play the victim, combined with Derek's intellectual appearance, they could flip the script on live television. Or perhaps they were just desperate to clear their names after being brutally attacked by the internet. The TV studio had 2 chairs facing each other. I wore a simple business suit, my makeup light but exuding steadfast resolve. On the other side, Martha wore a drab, old, worn-out outfit, clutching a handkerchief, her eyes red as if she had just finished crying a river. Derek sat next to her, wearing a sharp suit, but his eyes darted around nervously. He didn't dare look directly at me. The show's host started with open-ended questions, giving both sides a chance to speak. Martha seized the opportunity, launching into her poor me routine. I'm old. I sacrificed my whole life for my children. When my daughter-in-law joined the family, I treated her like my own flesh and blood. And how does she repay me? By selling the house and throwing me out on the street. Tell me, has anyone ever seen a child so evil? She sniffled, dabbing her eyes with the handkerchief. Her acting was so convincing that if I didn't know the truth, I might have felt sorry for her too. Derek sat beside her, occasionally patting her shoulder, playing the role of the devoted son perfectly. When it was my turn, I didn't use tears to fight tears. I calmly pulled a folder from my bag and placed it gently on the table. I looked straight into the camera, then turned to look at Martha. My voice was steady, echoing through the studio. Mom, you say you treated me like your own flesh and blood. Let me ask you, have you ever forced your own flesh and blood to kneel and scrub the floors by hand? Have you ever locked your own flesh and blood outside in the freezing cold just because they came home 5 minutes late from work? And most importantly, what kind of mother slaps her own flesh and blood so hard they bleed from the mouth in a public restaurant just because they wouldn't give their house to your daughter? Martha choked. She stammered, trying to argue, but I had already pulled out my next piece of evidence. I turned to Derek, the man trying to shrink into his chair. This was the fatal blow I had saved for him. Derek, you always claimed you were the provider, the pillar of the family. So, explain these statements. For 3 years, the mortgage, utilities, groceries, and gifts for both sides of the family came from my account. Where did your salary go? Did it go toward funding your sister's delusions of grandeur? I pointed to the bank statements showing transfers from Derek's account to Tara's, perfectly aligning with the dates Tara bought a new car or posted photos from luxury vacations. Derek turned pale. Sweat poured down his face under the hot studio lights. He stammered, "That. I was just lending it to her." The host, sharp and quick-witted, moved in for the kill. "Derek, the audience is very interested in the video. Why is it that when your wife was slapped to the floor by your mother, you casually continued eating and showed absolutely no reaction to protect her? Is that how you love your wife?" The question was like an invisible slap straight to Derek's face in front of millions of viewers. He opened his mouth, but no words came out. His cowardly silence on national television stripped away the facade of a respectable man, revealing a spineless, irresponsible mama's boy. The studio audience began to murmur, casting disgusted glares at him. Martha, seeing her son backed into a corner, tried to scream and throw a tantrum. But under the studio lights and the naked truth, her screams were pathetic and meaningless. It turned out, the real reason Tara had demanded to move to the city and take my house wasn't for her kids' education. Tara's husband, the brother-in-law Derek always praised as resourceful, was actually a notorious gambler in their hometown. He had secretly mortgaged his own parents' house and taken out loans from loan sharks to gamble and invest in crypto scams. Their house in the country had been vandalized with red paint by debt collectors, which was why they were trying to flee to the city, using the private school excuse to hide out in my luxury condo. Martha, the woman who had just cried tragically on TV, was now the center of public scorn. Videos of her screaming at neighbors and fighting over pennies at the farmer's market were uploaded by acquaintances, exposing her as a bitter, toxic woman. People on the streets pointed and whispered. Local vendors even refused to sell to her, saying they were afraid she'd accuse them of scamming her. Humiliated, Martha locked herself in her cramped rental apartment, too ashamed to show her face outside. Derek didn't fare any better. His image of stammering, head bowed on national TV, became a meme mocked everywhere. At work, he was ostracized by his colleagues. Partners canceled meetings. A major client emailed his company's executive board, stating they were uncomfortable entrusting a multi-million-dollar project to a man with such poor moral character and lack of backbone. Derek frantically called me not to apologize, but to assign blame. He used a burner number to text, "Asterisk, are you happy now? You destroyed this family, are you happy? Do you know I'm about to lose my contract because of you?" Asterisk, reading that text, I just found his delusion hilarious. Even now, he thought times was the destroyer, refusing to admit that his family's greed and deceit had lit the fuse themselves. I didn't reply. I just took a screenshot and saved it in my evidence folder. I knew a cornered beast would bite wildly. Derek was losing control, and his downfall at his corporate job would be the next domino to fall. I didn't have to do much. I just had to sit back and let the truth do its brutal work. The atmosphere at my company had been incredibly thick the past few days. Although I worked in marketing and Derek worked in sales, office gossip travels faster than the speed of light. Derek, in a state of desperation and bitterness after being exposed on TV, decided to play an incredibly reckless hand. He started spreading rumors to his coworkers that I was an ungrateful gold digger, that I had abused my position to leak project details to competitors to make money on the side to buy the house, and that I had abandoned him to run off with a rich lover. These malicious rumors were like tiny needles, small, but incredibly irritating. Some believed him, some doubted him, but most looked at me with scrutinizing eyes. The climax happened on a Friday afternoon. I received an urgent email summoning me to the Internal Audit Committee. The email was brief but heavy, requesting the presence of Hannah Sterling in conference room 1 at 14:00 to address several complaints regarding professional ethics and information security protocols. I walked into the conference room and saw Derek already sitting there. His face was gaunt, his eyes had dark circles, but they gleamed with a manic, triumphant light. He believed that with his seniority and status as a top performer, he could get me fired, or at least smear my reputation so badly, I'd be forced to resign. Sitting opposite us were the HR director and the head of internal audit, people known for being strict and uncompromising. The tension in the room was as tight as a violin string about to snap. The head of audit pushed his glasses up, his voice monotone. "Miss Sterling, we received a formal complaint from Derek Vance, alleging that you engaged in fraudulent activity regarding the spring marketing campaign, causing damage to his reputation and the company. Do you have anything to say?" I looked at Derek. He smirked, the smile of a man who thought he held all the cards. He had no idea I had been waiting for this exact moment for a long time. I didn't show an ounce of fear or hesitation. I calmly opened my purse and pulled out the tiny black USB drive, the object I had kept on my person at all times these past few weeks. I placed the USB on the table. The small clack times echoed loudly in the silent room. I looked straight into the eyes of the executive board, my voice clear and confident. "Gentlemen, I don't need to explain myself with empty words. The truth is in here. Before you conclude whether I committed fraud or not, I request permission to present some documents regarding my accuser, Mr. Derek Vance. I believe that after you see this, you will understand who the real parasite in this company is." Seeing the USB, the smile on Derek's face instantly vanished, replaced by sheer, unadulterated panic. He recognized that familiar object, the place where he stored his darkest secrets. He lunged forward to grab it, but I swiftly slid it across the table, to the head of audit. "This is a full backup of receipts, emails, and internal chats that I accidentally discovered on our shared home computer. Please verify them." The cards were on the table, and I held the royal flush. The projector screen in the conference room lit up, displaying a series of meticulously organized folders. I clicked on a folder named Backdoor Projects. Numbers, scanned contracts, and chat logs appeared in crystal clear detail. The room was dead silent. The only sound was the whirring of the projector fan and the heavy breathing of the people present. Derek's face went from flushed red to sheet white. His hands trembled, gripping the edge of the table, sweat pouring down his face. I pointed to a consulting service contract with a company called Blue Sky Consulting. My voice rang out like steel. "Gentlemen, this is a $30,000 contract that Mr. Vance approved last May for market strategy consulting. However, according to my investigation, Blue Sky Consulting is a shell company. The registered legal representative is Hank Miller, the husband of Mr. Vance's sister, my brother-in-law." I scrolled down, opening a copy of Derek's personal bank statements, which he had carelessly left saved on the computer. And here, immediately after Blue Sky Consulting received the payment from our company, $20,000 was wired back into Mr. Vance's personal account. He then transferred it to an unknown account with the memo, "paying Tara's debt, This money, gentlemen, is the hard-earned money of this company, embezzled by him to pay off his sister's family's gambling debts." The HR director frowned, picking up the printed packets I had provided to cross-reference. Everything matched perfectly. the dates, the amounts, and it wasn't just one time. Derek had done this 3 separate times with various small projects, totaling nearly $80,000 in embezzled funds. He had abused his superior's trust and exploited loopholes in the vendor approval process to enrich himself. I didn't get this evidence overnight. It was the result of meticulous observation and a wife's intuition when she saw her husband bringing home irregular amounts of money while hiding the sources. Derek couldn't maintain his aggressive facade anymore. He slumped into his chair, stammering nonsense. No, it's not true. I just borrowed it temporarily. I was going to pay it back. But his weak excuses only made him look more pathetic. The head of audit slammed his hand on the table, his voice echoing like a judge's verdict. Mr. Vance, your actions are not only a severe violation of professional ethics, but they also constitute corporate embezzlement and fraud. We trusted you, and you turned this company into your family's personal piggy bank. I looked at Derek. The man who was once my husband was now cowering like a rat dragged out of its hole. I didn't feel victorious. I only felt pity mixed with disgust. Out of greed and vanity, he had sold his conscience and destroyed a 10-year career. He wanted to get me fired, but he ended up digging his own grave. The meeting concluded with a notice of immediate termination for Derek. To avoid a messy public legal scandal that could affect the company's stock price, the executive board issued an ultimatum. Derek had to repay the entire $80,000 embezzled amount within 30 days. If he failed, the file would be handed directly to the FBI and the police, and he would face 7 to 15 years in federal prison. Derek walked out of the conference room like a soulless corpse. He was escorted by security to pack his personal belongings and was immediately marched out of the building. The prestigious title of sales director that he held just that morning had vanished into thin air. I stood in the elevator lobby and watched him holding a small cardboard box, looking frail and unstable. Seeing me, Derek dropped the box, lunged forward, and fell to his knees right in the middle of the corporate lobby, where dozens of coworkers were watching. "Hannah, please save me. I beg you, save me just this once." Derek grabbed the hem of my skirt, sobbing uncontrollably, his voice cracking with terror. "Talk to the bosses. Retract the evidence. Where am I supposed to get $80,000? The house is sold, you have all the money, I have nothing. Do you want to see me go to prison? We used to be husband and wife, Hannah." I looked down at the man kneeling at my feet, bile rising in my throat. When he slapped me, when he and his mother kicked me out of my own home, when he smeared my name all over the internet, did he remember that we were husband and wife? Now, with the blade of the law at his throat, he pulls the marriage card to beg for mercy. I swatted his hands away, taking a step back, my voice cold but strangely calm. "Derek, when you stole company money to fund your sister, did you think about the consequences? You told your sister to sell her car, sell her designer bags, sell everything you bought for her to pay off the debt. The money from the house sale is the blood, sweat, and tears of my parents and me. I have absolutely no obligation to use it to save your life. You evil bitch." Failing to beg me, Derek's true colors instantly returned. His eyes flared with bloodshot hatred. "You pushed me to my death. Remember this." I looked straight into his eyes, not an ounce of fear in my body. "I didn't push you. You and your family's greed pushed you to your death. This is the last lesson I'll teach you. If you have the guts to steal, you better have the guts to take the punishment. Don't try to drag other people down into the mud with you." I turned and walked away, leaving him screaming helplessly behind me. Corporate security quickly dragged him out the doors. The automatic glass doors slid shut, separating our two worlds. I stepped out onto the street, taking a deep breath of the polluted city air, yet it felt incredibly fresh. I knew the war wasn't entirely over, but the darkness enveloping my life was finally dissipating. Derek had lost everything: his home, his job, his honor, and his dignity. And me, I still had my 2 hands and my mind to start over. His greatest punishment wasn't prison. It was the torment of his own conscience, if he had one left, and the contempt of everyone around him for the rest of his life. The news of Derek's firing spread fast, but he didn't have time to worry about his ego anymore. The pressure to repay $80,000 to the company within 30 days hung over his head like the sword of Damocles. If he didn't pay it back, he would face prison bars, ending his life at 32. Desperate, Derek scrambled everywhere. He sold his financed car, begged friends and relatives for loans. I even heard Martha had to mortgage her meager pension just to send money to save her son. But they were still woefully short. 3 days after that fateful meeting, Derek asked to meet me at Harrison's law office. He no longer had his arrogant swagger. The man sitting across from me was frail, bearded, and had deep bags under his eyes from insomnia. He looked at the divorce petition on the table. His hand shook as he held the pen, but he couldn't bring himself to sign. Derek looked up at me, his eyes pleading, calculating the final move of a desperate man. "Hannah, I'll sign it. But you have to promise me one thing. You have to promise you won't give any more evidence to the police if the company sues me, and the money from the house. Can you help me out a little? Consider it our final parting gift." I looked at Derek, my heart entirely devoid of emotion. Even at this exact moment, he was still trying to extract some final benefit from me. I took a sip of tea, my voice calm but icy. "Derek, you need to remember your position right now. The fact that I didn't sue you for marital fraud is the final kindness you're getting. As for the house money, I returned your $40,000 principal. That is a fair settlement. The appreciation, the equity from my hard work, and the down payment from my parents, you have no right to touch any of it. You sign this paper, relinquishing all claims to my assets. I will hand over the original USB drive and stay silent. How you handle the company is your problem." Derek bit his lip until it bled. He knew he had no other way out. If I pushed harder, or if I sued him for defamation and assault, he would drown in legal troubles with no escape. He took the pen and shakily signed his name on the line for husband. The ink appeared on the white paper like the shattering cracks of a marriage that had once been painted with empty promises. He stamped his thumbprint. The red ink pressing onto the paper sounded dry. "It's done." Derek pushed the paper toward me, his voice hoarse. "Are you happy now? You destroyed my life. Are you happy?" I picked up the petition, carefully checked the signature and thumbprint, and placed it neatly into my purse. I looked at him, my eyes devoid of vindictiveness, only holding pity for a foolish, lost soul. I replied softly, "I didn't destroy you. I only took back what belonged to me and gave you back to your true self. You call me cruel, but have you ever asked yourself why times a gentle wife turned into this? Finances settled, affections severed. Goodbye." 1 month after the divorce was finalized, I requested a transfer to our branch office in Los Angeles. Chicago, for me, now held too many sad memories and unnecessary drama. I needed a new environment, a new atmosphere to cleanse my soul and start over. The day I dragged my suitcase to O'Hare Airport, a light, freezing drizzle was falling, as if the bitter Midwest winter was trying to hold me back. But when the plane landed at LAX, the brilliant, warm California sunshine and the fast-paced energy of the West Coast flooded in, warming my freezing heart. I rented a high-end apartment in downtown LA, right near the Wilshire Grand Center. The apartment wasn't massive, but it had a spacious balcony overlooking the sprawling city skyline. I decorated my new sanctuary myself. This time, I didn't need to ask anyone's permission. I didn't have to choose the paint color Derek liked or the curtains Martha approved of. I bought roses and orchids to fill the balcony. I bought the cream-colored sofa I had always dreamed of. Every item in the house bore the mark of freedom and independence. The new job in LA was busier than I imagined. The market here was dynamic and fiercely competitive, demanding I work twice as hard as I did back east. I threw myself into my work like a moth to a flame. Marketing plans and late-night meetings swept me away, leaving me no time to be sad or dwell on the past. My new colleagues were open and progressive. They didn't care if I was divorced. They only cared if I could deliver results. That fairness and professionalism made me feel incredibly comfortable. On weekend nights, when the city lit up brilliantly, I would brew a cup of hot tea and sit on my balcony, watching the distant headlights stream down the freeways. There was no snoring from a heartless husband. There were no demanding phone calls from a mother-in-law. There was only the gentle breeze and soft jazz playing from my speaker. Loneliness, sometimes, is a form of happiness, the happiness of silence and peace that I had never experienced before. I signed up for a yoga class, hit the gym, and took a floral arrangement course. I realized that when a woman learns to love herself, the whole world seems to become gentler toward her. The corporate environment in LA was glamorous, but also filled with traps, especially for an attractive, single woman like me. At a networking banquet hosted at a 5-star hotel in Beverly Hills, I met Mr. Trenton, a notorious, incredibly wealthy real estate tycoon. He was in his 50s, charismatic, rich, and famous for being a playboy. From the very first moment we met, his eyes didn't hide the lust of a hunter spotting exotic prey. Mr. Trenton approached me, offering a glass of wine, his deep voice dripping with experience. "Miss Sterling, I've heard a lot about you. A capable woman, moving across the country alone and dominating the market here. Very impressive. But women, being too strong, can be lonely. In a city like LA, if you had a strong shoulder to lean on, your path would be lined with roses." His words were loaded with implication, a mix of flattery and a thinly veiled proposition for a transactional relationship. I smiled politely, skillfully maintaining my distance. "Thank you for the compliment, Mr. Trenton. I believe whether roses have thorns or not depends on how you hold them. And as for the path, walking on my own 2 feet is always the most secure way." He laughed loudly, seemingly amused by my resistance. In the following days, my office was constantly bombarded with expensive floral arrangements and designer gifts sent by Mr. Trenton. He even publicly let it be known that if I agreed to be his confidant, the exclusive marketing contract for his newest mega development would go to my agency. And naturally, my commission would be massive enough to buy several houses. That aggressive pursuit and the promise of immense wealth and status could sway anyone, especially a woman who had just walked away from a financially ruined marriage. But I understood the unspoken rules of this game perfectly. Everything has a price. If I nodded, I would become a doll in his glass case, trading my self-respect for a sugar daddy. I arranged to meet Mr. Trenton at a high-end restaurant, not to accept, but to reject him. "Mr. Trenton, I deeply appreciate your affection, but I came to LA to work, to prove my capabilities, not to find a sugar daddy. For the project contract, I will bid fairly using my agency's portfolio. If you think we deserve it, let's collaborate. But if you need a confidant, I'm afraid I'm not a good fit." I spoke clearly, looking him dead in the eye. Mr. Trenton's face darkened. The smile vanished from his lips. He growled, "Miss Sterling, you should know your place. In this city, I can elevate anyone I want, and I can drown anyone so deep they'll never resurface. Don't make me play hardball." I stood up, adjusted my blazer, and responded with icy calm, "Mr. Trenton, I have already rebuilt myself from absolute ashes once, so I am not afraid of being drowned. In fact, I think your biggest competitor will be very interested in the marketing strategy I've been developing." With that, I walked away, leaving him fuming in his seat. The very next day, I contacted Mr. Trenton's biggest rival conglomerate and pitched my bold marketing plan. Through sheer talent, I won a massive contract, dealing a heavy blow to Mr. Trenton's ego and firmly establishing my position in the industry. I realized temptation is just a test of character, and I had passed it with pride. My life gradually settled into a stable orbit, revolving around my career and the small joys I created for myself. I wasn't in a rush to find love, because while the wounds had closed, the scars were still tender. Until one weekend, I attended a digital transformation tech seminar downtown. Amidst hundreds of unfamiliar, loud, and rushed faces, my attention was drawn to a man sitting in the front row, taking meticulous notes and occasionally asking the speakers incredibly sharp questions. During the break, I happened to stand next to him at the coffee station. He turned to me and smiled gently. "Your presentation earlier on AI and marketing was very practical. I'm Miles. I head the tech division at a software firm." His voice was deep, measured, and lacked the arrogant or predatory undertones of the men I usually met at networking events. We started talking about work, which drifted into perspectives on life in this vibrant city. Miles didn't have the flashy, showy exterior of a tycoon. He dressed simply in a white button-down and slacks, but he exuded an aura of intellect and reliability. After the seminar, he invited me for coffee at a quiet, hidden cafe down a side street. The atmosphere was somber, playing soft instrumental music, a stark contrast to the noise outside. We sat across from each other, and strangely, I felt comfortable enough to share things I rarely told strangers. Miles listened to me talk about the difficulties of moving to LA and the pressures of work. He didn't interrupt, he just occasionally nodded in empathy. He told me about his life, about his wife who passed away from a terminal illness 5 years ago, and how he had raised his young daughter on his own. In his eyes, I saw experience and a sadness that time had soothed, transforming it into tolerance and understanding. He didn't judge my past, nor did he aggressively pursue me. "Hannah, everyone has a past. The important thing is how we face it. You are a strong woman. I see that in how you speak, in your eyes." Miles's words were gentle, like a cool stream flowing through my arid soul. I looked at him and felt an invisible connection. It wasn't the fiery passion of love at first sight, but the safe, peaceful feeling of two souls who had weathered storms and found harmony. Saying goodbye to Miles outside my apartment building, he didn't ask for my number to flirt. He just said, "If you're free this weekend, my daughter and I are going to the bookstore. Would you like to join us? She would probably really like you." That simple invitation made my heart skip a tiny beat. I nodded, watching his silhouette disappear into the traffic. My new life in this West Coast city had finally given me a taste of the sweetness of freedom and respect, the very things I had craved through years of tear-soaked marriage. However, life always seems to know how to test the human heart. Just when we drop our guard, when the past seems to be soundly asleep, it suddenly knocks on the door. That evening, while I was arranging fresh roses on my balcony, my phone vibrated violently. It was an unknown number, but the area code was painfully familiar. It was the area code of my ex-husband's hometown in Indiana. I hesitated for a long time, intending not to answer, but a woman's intuition told me something was wrong. I picked up. From the other end came choked sobs and the hoarse, exhausted voice of Derek. "Hannah, it's me. Please don't hang up, I beg you. Dad. Dad isn't going to make it." The news hit me like a bucket of ice water, making my hands shake so badly I dropped my scissors onto the floor. My former father-in-law. He was the only person in that family who had retained a shred of conscience and humanity. I remembered my early days as a daughter-in-law. When Martha tormented me and forced me to skip meals, he was the one who secretly slipped a warm bun or a baked potato into my coat pocket. He was kind, but cowardly, never daring to argue back against Martha for his entire life. But the way he looked at me always held a deep sense of guilt and pity. Derek sobbed like a child. "Dad has stage 4 lung cancer. It's metastasized to his bones. The doctors say he needs emergency surgery to extend his life, but the out-of-pocket costs are insane. We already mortgaged the house in the country. I don't have a single dime to my name. Mom keeps fainting. Hannah, I know I wronged you terribly, but Dad loved you. Please, save him." Hearing those pleas, my mind became a tangled mess. My hatred for Derek and Martha was still there, hot and burning. But the image of the frail, weathered old man secretly handing me a carton of milk when I was sick flashed vividly in my mind. He wasn't guilty. His only crime was being too weak to stand up for what was right. I stayed silent for a long time, listening to Derek's heavy breathing on the other end, then asked quietly, "How much did the doctor say you need?" $20,000. At least $20,000 for the initial surgery and meds. I've tried to borrow from everyone, but no one will lend it to me. They know I'm bankrupt, Derek replied, his voice full of despair. $20,000 wasn't a small amount, but for me right now, it was within my means. However, a fierce struggle raged inside me. Should I help the very people who pushed me into the mud? Would this help be exploited by them again? I tossed and turned that entire night. The image of my father-in-law lying on a hospital bed haunted my mind. The next morning, I met Miles at our usual cafe. I told him everything, hiding none of the conflict, tearing me apart. Miles listened quietly. His warm hand covered mine. His voice was steady. Hannah, doing a good deed isn't about whether the recipient deserves it. It's about keeping your own soul at peace. If you don't help, and he passes away, you will be the one living with the guilt. But times you help so that your kindness isn't cheapened, that is what you need to calculate. Miles's words were like a lighthouse, illuminating the dark corners of my mind. He was right. I was helping my father-in-law out of gratitude for his past kindness, not because I had any lingering feelings for Derek or Martha, but I was no longer the naive daughter-in-law they could leech off of. Compassion had to be paired with reason. Kindness needed clear boundaries. I decided to help, but not as a handout. It would be a fair, transactional deal. I called Derek back. My voice was clear and cold through the phone. I've thought about it. I can give you $20,000 to take care of your dad. But remember this very carefully. This is not a gift. It is not me repaying any family debt to your house. This is a loan. It is a high-risk investment I am making solely for your father's sake. Hearing this, Derek rejoiced profusely. Thank you. Thank you so much, Hannah. I promise I will pay you back. I will work day and night, any job, to pay you back. I cut him off, not giving those empty promises a chance to spew further. Don't promise. I don't trust your promises. I need it in black and white. Pack your bags, fly to LA to meet me. Bring your ID and the property deed to your family's farmhouse in Indiana. The ancestral land. We will go to a notary public. The other end went dead silent. The ancestral farmhouse was the last remaining asset of Derek's lineage. It was the place they worshipped their ancestors, the final shred of pride Martha fiercely clung to despite their mountain of debt. Derek stammered. But that's the family estate. Mom. I laughed coldly, responding with ironclad resolve. Is your father's life more important, or that piece of land? If you don't agree, then forget it. I'm not forcing you. You figure it out yourself. Derek frantically yelled back. Okay. I agree. I'll steal the deed and bring it. It means saving Dad. I hung up, a bitter feeling rising in my chest. It turned out that when pushed into a corner, people would sell out their own ancestors. But at least, this time, his motive retained a shred of conscience. I had a lawyer draft a promissory note and a lien agreement. Every clause was airtight. I wasn't going to let my kindness turn into stupidity again. This was the final lesson I was teaching their family. Financial clarity, emotional severance. 2 days later, Derek arrived in Los Angeles. Seeing him standing in front of my corporate office building, I almost didn't recognize the once dashing, arrogant husband. Derek was emaciated, his skin darkened and weathered. His clothes were wrinkled and worn. He clutched his backpack tightly to his chest, his eyes darting around as if afraid someone would steal the precious cargo inside. When he saw me walk out, looking elegant and confident in my designer business wear, Derek lowered his head. His insecurity and shame were evident in every gesture. I led Derek to a nearby notary public office. There was no polite small talk, no offering of tea to catch up. I placed the loan agreement on the table and pushed it toward him. Read it carefully. The loan amount is $20,000. The term is 2 years. The interest rate is the current standard bank rate. The collateral is the property deed to the Indiana farmhouse. If you default on the principal and interest, I have the right to foreclose on the property to recover the debt. Derek held the paper, his hands shaking violently. He looked up at me, his bloodshot eyes welling with tears. Hannah, why? Why are you so ruthlessly calculating? That is my family's ancestral home. How could you have the heart? I looked straight into his eyes, not wavering for a second. Ruthless? Compared to you and your mother kicking me out onto the street, compared to you dragging my name through the mud all over the internet, this piece of paper is incredibly merciful. I am lending you money to save your father, not giving you money to fund your delusions. Sign it or don't. It's up to you. Derek bit his lip until it bled. He knew he had no way out. His father was lying in a hospital bed waiting to die. Every struggling breath depended on this money. He took the pen and shakily signed his name on the borrower line. Then, with trembling hands, he pulled the old, worn property deed from his backpack and placed it on the table as if placing the very soul of his lineage down. The notary verified the documents and stamped them with his official seal. The loud times, clack times of the stamp echoed dryly and coldly, officially terminating any lingering emotional ties, leaving only the relationship of creditor and debtor. I immediately wired $20,000 directly into the hospital's billing account. I did not give the cash to Derek. I didn't trust him. What if he got the cash in his hands and his gambling addiction flared up, or he was robbed by other debt collectors? It would be all for nothing. Derek looked at the text, confirming the hospital payment. He broke down crying right there in the notary office. The loud, ugly sobs of a failed, pathetic, and powerless man. "Take this return ticket and go take care of your dad," I said, handing him the flight itinerary I had pre-booked. "And one more thing. Do not tell your mother about mortgaging the deed yet. If the shock kills her, she'll end up following your dad. Take good care of him." I stood up, adjusted my purse, and walked out the door. Derek called out after me, "Hannah, I'm sorry. I regret everything so much." I didn't turn back. I just raised my hand and gave a slight wave goodbye. His regret held absolutely no value to me anymore. It was as cheap as the LA street dust clinging to the hem of my skirt. I thought everything would finally settle down once my father-in-law's initial surgery was successful. I threw myself back into the grind of work, silently hoping the storms were truly behind me. But the tree wants peace, and the wind refuses to stop. My act of kindness had bruised the egos and triggered the madness of desperate people. Hank, Tara's husband, the gambling degenerate drowning in debt. When he found out Derek had mortgaged the family estate to borrow money from me, he went insane. He believed that times was the reason his family was ruined, the reason he lost the gold mine he had been exploiting all these years. One morning, while I was in a management meeting, my dad called me repeatedly. My heart tightened. Intuition told me something was terribly wrong. I excused myself to answer. From the other end came my father's voice, cracking with sheer terror. "Hannah, come home right now, sweetie. Your mom had to be rushed to the ER. Our house. They destroyed our house." My ears rang. The ground beneath me seemed to collapse. I immediately booked the next flight out of LAX back to the Midwest. When I arrived at the gate of my parents' home in rural Indiana, the scene before me made my blood boil. I clenched my fists so hard my nails dug painfully into my skin. The peaceful, blue-painted iron gates of my family home were now covered in glaring, blood-red spray paint. The putrid, rotting stench of manure and rotten eggs filled the air. Messy, vulgar words were graffitied across the fence. Asterisk, pay your debts. Scammer daughter-in-law, evil family. Asterisk. The neighbors stood around, pointing and looking with pity at the once peaceful home of two retired school teachers. My dad sat slumped on the porch steps, his aging face etched with absolute agony. Seeing me, he shakily stood up, tears in his eyes. "Sweetie." Early this morning, two guys on a motorcycle pulled up. They threw bags of red paint and manure at the house. Your mom was sweeping the yard. She was so terrified, her blood pressure spiked, and she fainted on the spot. I called an ambulance. Thank God we got her to the ER in time. I looked at the mess in front of me. The foul smell hit my nose, making me want to vomit, but my rage overpowered everything else. I knew exactly who was behind this. Only a low-life, cowardly thug like Hank would resort to these dirty mafia tactics to terrorize elderly people. He thought doing this would scare me. He thought I would care about my pride and cough up cash to shut him up. He was dead wrong. He had touched my absolute final boundary. My family. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I calmly pulled out my phone and called a hazardous materials cleanup crew. Then, I walked straight into the house, into the back room, and opened the security camera system I had secretly installed after the internet mob attacked us months ago. On the computer screen, the high-definition footage showed two masked men clearly. And despite the masks, I recognized the distinct limp and the familiar red motorcycle belonging to Hank. I extracted all the data and copied it to a USB drive. My eyes were no longer the eyes of an enduring or merciful woman. They were the eyes of a daughter protecting her parents, fierce and ruthless. I turned to my dad, my voice like steel. "Don't worry, Dad. I am going to make them pay. Not with violence, but with the law. This time, I am throwing them in a federal cell, and I will show no mercy to anyone." I sat across from the lead detective at the county police precinct. The room was freezing and smelled of stale coffee and old paperwork. I placed the silver USB drive on the scratched wooden desk. My movement was decisive, like dropping a final verdict I had weighed very carefully. The detective plugged it into his computer. The black and white 4K night vision footage played on the screen, capturing every detail. In the video, two dark figures snuck up at dawn. The limping gait of a man who had been in a motorcycle accident from street racing was unmistakable. Hank, Tara's precious husband, was exposed as a cowardly thug. He raised his arm, hurling bags of red paint at the wall, then dumped a bucket of manure onto the driveway. The motion was practiced, like a professional debt collector. The detective squinted at the screen, zooming in on the license plate of the red motorcycle parked in the shadows, which the camera perfectly caught. He nodded in confirmation. "The evidence is rock solid. Felony vandalism, disturbing the peace, plus terrorizing the elderly, resulting in severe medical consequences. How do you want to proceed?" I looked at the screen, seeing the moment my mother's pale face collapsed onto the brick patio. My heart seized with sharp pain. I took a deep breath, my voice echoing calm but as cold as ancient ice. "I request that you press criminal charges. I will not accept mediation. I will not accept financial compensation to drop the charges. They dared to touch my mother. They will pay for it with their freedom." The arrest warrant was executed that very afternoon. Hank was sitting in a local dive bar, gambling and drinking, when the police stormed in and slapped the cuffs on him. He was still clueless, screaming, "What did I do? Why are you arresting me? I'm the brother-in-law of a rich city guy." But when he saw me standing silently next to the police cruiser, his eyes shifted from aggressive to pure terror. He realized that the rich city guy he relied on had collapsed, and the woman he despised was now holding the power of life and death over him. The news of Hank's arrest spread through the rural town like wildfire. People gossiped, some gloated, some clicked their tongues in pity, but no one truly felt sorry for a degenerate, gambling deadbeat. I stood watching the police cruiser roll away, kicking up a cloud of dust. I didn't feel victorious. I just felt a heavy sense of relief. The net of justice is vast. Its meshes are wide, but nothing escapes it. He sowed evil, and a prison cell was the bitter fruit he would have to swallow for the remaining years of his youth. The next morning, Tara found me at the hospital. She looked more pathetic and ragged than I had ever seen her. Gone was the shrill, arrogant sister-in-law who demanded my house. Her hair was a rat's nest, her eyes swollen shut from crying. Tara rushed forward and dropped to her knees right at my feet in the middle of the busy hospital corridor. She grabbed my pant leg, sobbing hysterically. "Hannah, please, I beg you. Please let my husband go. If he goes to prison, how am I supposed to survive with my kid? Drop the charges, please. I'm begging you." I looked at the woman kneeling at my feet, feeling a tragic irony creep into my heart. In the past, she had loudly ordered me out of my own home, and happily joined her mother in trashing my name. Now, when disaster struck, her fake pride couldn't save her. I took a step back, prying her hands off me. My voice dropped low, sad but unwavering. "Tara, when your husband threw paint at my house and caused my mother to faint, when did you think about this moment? The law is not a game, and my mercy has its limits. Go home, focus on raising your child, and make sure he doesn't grow up to be like his father." Right then, Tara's phone rang. She answered it, and suddenly let out a blood-curdling, agonizing scream. She collapsed onto the hospital floor, fainting dead away. Tragic news had just arrived from the oncology ward in the city. My father-in-law hadn't made it through the post-surgery recovery. His health was too fragile, and the mental shock of hearing that his son-in-law was arrested and his son was drowning in debt made him simply give up and pass away. The death of my father-in-law was the final hammer blow that completely shattered their family. The funeral was held in a bleak, hauntingly desolate atmosphere. Derek returned for the funeral, his face gaunt, aging into a 60-year-old man overnight. Martha, upon hearing that her husband had died and her son-in-law was in jail, suffered a massive stroke. Her mouth drooped. The entire left side of her body was paralyzed. She was bedridden, only able to make incomprehensible grunts. I still sent a floral wreath to the funeral. The ribbon read, * with deepest respect for Dad. * I did not attend in person, because my presence would only add unnecessary tragedy and resentment. According to the neighbors, Derek had to sell the very last valuable items in their house just to pay for the funeral costs. After the burial, Tara had to grab her child and flee to remote relatives to hide from her husband's loan sharks. Derek spent his days driving Uber, his nights caring for his paralyzed, bedridden mother, carrying a mountain of debt and a crushing, belated regret on his shoulders. I returned to Los Angeles, throwing myself back into the whirlwind of work to fill the empty spaces in my soul. Today was my 32nd birthday. There was no extravagant party, no bright candles, no fake hollow congratulations on social media. I chose to celebrate my new year in the quietest way possible, next to Miles and his daughter, Penny. We gathered around a home-cooked family meal in his cozy apartment. The rich smell of roasted salmon and clam chowder filled the air, reminding me of warm family dinners back home. Little Penny ran around grabbing plates, singing "Happy Birthday" in her adorable, lisping voice. Miles placed the best piece of fish onto my plate. The way he looked at me was gentle and deeply understanding. He didn't need to use flowery words. He knew I hated loud noise, and he knew I cherished these simple, quiet moments far more than any expensive gift. "Happy birthday, Hannah," Miles said softly, pulling a small, red velvet box from his pocket. I opened it. Inside was a beautifully crafted executive fountain pen, engraved with my name in sleek, sharp lettering. I looked up at him, surprised by such a thoughtful gift. Miles smiled, taking my hand. "I didn't buy you jewelry or a designer buffag, because I know you don't need those things to validate your worth. I got you this pen, hoping you will continue to write brilliant new chapters in your life, sign major contracts, and always remain independent on the path you've chosen. I won't promise you the world, but I promise I will always respect your independence." Miles's words were like a cool, refreshing stream, flowing into my soul, making my nose sting with emotion. How long had it been since I heard words of such profound respect? In the past, Derek only bought me gifts to make times look good, to make me serve his family better. Miles respected my intellect and my career. I realized this was the true love of mature adults. Not binding, not possessing, but companionship and mutual respect. We sat together on the windy balcony, looking out at the glittering lights of LA at night. Penny had fallen fast asleep in my lap, her breathing warm and steady. I leaned my head against Miles's shoulder, feeling peace spread through every cell in my body. The old storms had faded into the past, leaving only a serene present and a future full of promise. I silently thanked life for letting me stumble, so I could learn how to stand back up, for letting me taste the bitter, so I could truly appreciate this simple sweetness. One late afternoon near the end of the year, as the winter winds began to carry a slight chill, my phone dinged with a notification. I opened it. It was an alert from my banking app. * deposit received, $200. * memo, Derek Vance. First month loan payment. I'm sorry, and thank you. * I stared at that short message, lost in thought for a long time. $200, a minuscule amount compared to the $20,000 debt, and even smaller compared to the trauma I had to endure. But it showed that Derek was genuinely trying to rebuild his life from the ashes, trying to learn how to take responsibility for his mistakes. I didn't reply to the message. I didn't feel happy or sad. I just quietly swiped and deleted it, like wiping a smudge off my phone screen. To me, Derek was now just an old acquaintance who had walked through my life, left an expensive lesson, and vanished. I no longer held any resentment. I didn't care how he lived, if driving Uber was exhausting, or if caring for his paralyzed mother was agonizing. This calm indifference, I realized, was the ultimate liberation for both him and me. I stood up and walked out onto the balcony of my 20th floor office, looking down at Los Angeles, rushing through a brilliant, golden sunset. The streams of cars moved like weaving threads, everyone carrying their own worries, their own private stories. I didn't start a charity to polish my name, nor did I open a cute little bakery to seek an easy life like the heroines in romance novels usually do. I am still me, a cold, decisive marketing director in the corporate battlefield, a woman who loves money but knows how to earn it through her own capability and dignity. I walked back to my desk, signing off on the final project files for the new year. The future ahead still holds many challenges, but I am no longer afraid of the dark, because I have learned that no one can bring you light unless you learn how to shine yourself. I packed my things, grabbed my bag, and walked out of the office. Miles was waiting for me in the lobby, his smile as warm as the morning sun. I smiled back, taking firm, proud steps toward him. This life is mine. My sadness, my joy, my pain, and my happiness are for me alone to decide. And happiness has finally blossomed on the barren soil of trauma. A strong, vibrant flower named freedom. Asterisk. We hope this story provides strength to those who are currently struggling, helping you believe that after the rain, the sun will always shine again. If you enjoyed the story, please subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications, like, and leave a comment sharing your thoughts. Thank you for listening, goodbye, and see you next time. Asterisk.